Which one is the best curriculum at preschool level? Is it our CBC? Is it the Montessori one? Is it the old 844 one? Or is it even international ones like the Cambridge? Okay, let's try and analyze them, and let's see which one is the best. Because I keep hearing people all the time saying, you know, my preschool is also Montessori. What does it really mean? Does it add any value, or what does our CBC not have? So let's take a look at this curricula. I won't go into defining and explaining each of the curricula in detail, but I'll go straight into the structure of this curricula. And I want to start from the old 844 curriculum that we used to use. The reason I'm still mentioning it is at preschool level, many of our preschool teachers are very comfortable with this kind of curriculum, and many of them still teach it, even though I know they should have evolved to CBC, but many of them still teach and use that curriculum. And you realize that it had the subject areas like language, mathematics, you know, the various outdoor activities, science, social, creative things, music, religious, life skills. So it was very subject-based in that sense. Okay, we look at CBC, we have some kind of integration. That's even why we switched to things, to naming, like language activities, mathematical activities, environmental activities, religious, psychomotor and creative activities. There's a lot of interrelation between the various elements. So that's the nature of subjects in our CBC. Then for somebody then who has never heard of Montessori and maybe hears of Montessori in very glowing terms, you would imagine that it's, you know, totally wonderful and has different things. And I don't know, it depends. But it also has mathematics. It also has language, just like what we have in CBC. Then it has two unique looking ones, like practical life activities and sensorial activities, which a lot of the concepts in there are already covered in our environmental activities and psychomotor and creative activities. A lot of those things are already covered, but I think there's an emphasis there, done in, you know, a very Montessori way. And then cultural studies as well, which again, to be fair, we have quite a lot of it covered in our environmental activities, and even to some extent in our Christian religious activities, and Islamic, of course, if it's Islamic or Hindu, depending on the religion that's there. Now, if you look at the international ones, and let me pick only Cambridge, you look at Cambridge has things like mathematics, just like we have, communication, language literacy, similar to what we have, personal, social, and emotional development, you know, more or less what we have also, with our environmental activities, our CRE and our psychomotor. There are so many elements shared, understanding the world, physical development, creative expression. Just from looking at these terms, you realize that we are more or less saying the same things for all these subjects. So for me, the first source of, let me say, being content is that this curriculum are more or less saying the same things, but in different ways. And even more important, they are all designed to train or to develop children between 3 years and 6 years old. All this. And these children, at the end of the day, this is the pre-literacy level, or the literacy level, where we really expect them to just develop those formative skills and capabilities. So if we analyze particular learning areas like language, let's see how language is different across. If it's language, for 844 and CBC, we have structured sequential approach in learning. We do oral skills, we do reading readiness, and we do writing readiness, okay, in some kind of a sequence like that. Cambridge has more of this holistic approach, and we have a lot of focus on phonological awareness also, which, to be fair, again, there's quite a lot of it in CBC right now. Then for Montessori, there's that focus on the practical life activities and sensorial activities, which funnel and lead into a child's ability to be able to write. So that through the sensorial activities, they're able to like use these tools better. Moving on to mathematics, in CBC and 844, the way we teach is we teach classification, then we teach measurement, then we teach numbers, you know, like that. Whereas in Cambridge, they focus a bit more on concrete, pictorial, abstract. This is acronym they have, CPA. Concrete, pictorial, abstract. So in the real world, and then pictorial, that you can draw what's in the real world, and then you abstract it into a number like 3. So like 3 is like a virtual thing, but 3 you can draw it, and then also concrete. Which again, to be fair, We are doing it quite a lot in CBC. And then Montessori has this concept of quantity before symbol, and they tend to adhere to it very strictly, where the child is first made to understand physical quantities, like physically, before they move on to the symbol. Very similar to CPA of Cambridge that we've talked about, which, as I've said, we're implementing it in CBC as well. So just using those examples of language and mathematics, you really realize that there's hardly any difference between this curricula in the way they're implemented. And there are some teaching methods in others that are more beneficial and are better, or maybe unlock things in the children faster. But ultimately, these three curricula look the same. So in summary, if I just try and give some comparative view about this curricula, for the old 844 system, things were really structured relatively distinctly. So, there's time for language, there's time for maths, and all that. So almost very distinct. CBC, and the reason why we have bracket Tharaka-Nithi is Tharaka-Nithi County and Kenyatta University developed a curriculum for playgroup only, 3 to 4 years old. That interfaces really well with the CBC PP1, PP2. That's why we've listed it there as well. We have the whole concept of the learning areas that are presented as language activities, mathematical activities. And we have the concepts of strands and themes. So we have a lot of cross-cutting things in between. Very similar to what we have in 844 as well, but we improved it in that regard. For Cambridge, they say that it's more of an inquiry-led curriculum, which, by the way, if you notice in CBC, we borrowed quite a bit from it. The whole concept of key inquiry questions and all that. Even the concept of strands are things that we borrowed very heavily from this Cambridge curricula. But again, it's inquiry-led, and almost all of it revolves around those 6 developmental domains, which I talked about earlier. Whereas for Montessori, it relies on what you call prepared environments. So you prepare a classroom environment, and the teacher sort of follows the child and sort of works with the child while they're there. And then they have these unique foundational learning areas, which are really the learning areas that I see people integrating when they say our CBC is also Montessori, which is this practical life activities. And what are these? There are things like dressing, which we have, pouring things and all that. So those are the practical life activities. And then sensorial activities, which is really to develop the senses of this child a bit more, which again, we have it in one form or the other across all the curricula. But the main idea of Montessori is that child chooses their own work and the adult sort of follows this child's line of interests in some kind of a prepared environment. So that's the whole idea here. Yeah, so at the end of the day, if you ask me, these curricula are really, really, really similar at this age level. You can use Montessori methods within CBC. You can learn quite a lot from how Cambridge has organized the things. But I want to urge our people who are implementing CBC not to feel inferior in any way. I actually think CBC is a far superior curricula in its organization. And if we're able to deliver, then it can compete and do just as well as all these other curricula.